Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Harry Ransom Center. Tonight, it is a genuine pleasure to introduce a program that has been conceived and developed by faculty and students in the College of Fine Arts. Inspired by the Center's Performing Arts collection and the current vaudeville exhibition, they have brought archival materials to life. They are examining the vaudeville stage as a site for development of American cultural norms through performances by and about the country's immigrant population. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Charlotte Canning.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for that lovely introduction. Vaudeville emerged in the second half of the 19th century as a discursive consolidation of a heterogeneous genealogy of disparate variety entertainments. For 70 years, vaudeville was inscribed and reinscribed as a key mode of spectatorial knowledge formation in the U.S. It served as the de facto art form of new hegemonic modes of commercial incorporation. The growth of vaudeville was the basis for the paradigmatic experience of popular entertainment as an industry.
Hello.
The new performance.
What do you think you're doing up there?
Giving a lecture on immigrants and vaudeville. That's the event for tonight.
Like that. You're gonna stand up there and do it that way.
What do you mean, that way?
Like this. Duh. Ha, ha. Ho, ho, ho.
I did not sound like that.
I did not sound like that.
What do you want me to do? It's in the script.
Well, can you, I don't know, you jazz it up a little bit? Aren't you supposed to be a professor in the theater department?
Well, yeah, but...
I mean, come on. Look at you. You don't even look like a real professor. None of these people are going to believe a single thing you have to say. If they can even stay awake long enough to hear it.
Okay. Fine. You want a real professor?
Yeah, right? Yeah!
I'll give you a real professor.
Okay, whatever you say. I am so sorry about that, folks. Why don't we get some real entertainment up here, huh? Yeah. Come on up, gents.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing? We got some Longhorns fans out here. Huh? Longhorns fans, where are you? There they are. Does anybody here follow the Longhorn baseball team? Anyone? No. Yeah. You know the thing about Longhorn baseball players? They all got such peculiar names.
Oh, funny names.
Yeah, nicknames. Now on the Longhorn team, we got who's on first, what's on second, and I don't know who's on third.
Oh, you know, that's what I want to find out. I want you to tell me the names of all the fellas on the Longhorn team.
Well, I'm telling you, we got who's on first, what's on second, and I don't know who's on third.
You know, the fellas' names.
Yes.
Well, tell me who's playing first.
Yes.
I mean the fella's name on first base.
Who?
The fellow playing first base.
Who?
The guy on first base.
Who is on first?
Well, what are you asking me for?
I'm not asking you, I'm telling you who is on first.
I'm asking you who's on first.
That's the man's name.
That's whose name?
Yes!
When you pay off the first baseman every month, who gets the money?
Every dollar of it. Why not? The man's entitled to it.
Who is?
Yes!
So who gets it?
Why shouldn't he? Sometimes his wife comes and collects it.
Whose wife?
Yeah, after all, the man earns it.
Who does?
Absolutely.
Well, all I'm trying to find out is what's the guy's name on first base?
No. What is on second?
I'm not asking you about second.
Who's on first?
Oh, UT has a good outfield, huh?
Oh, absolutely.
The left infielder's name.
Why?
Well, I don't know. I thought I'd just ask.
Well, I thought I'd just tell you.
Then tell me who's playing left field.
Who's playing first?
Stay out of the infield. The left infielder's name.
Why?
Because.
Oh, he's the center field.
Wait a minute. You got a pitcher on this team?
Well, wouldn't this be a fine team without a pitcher?
Tell me the pitcher's name.
Tamara.
Ow! Ugh. Now, when the guy at the bat bunts the ball, me being a good catcher, I want to throw the guy out at first base. So I pick up the ball and throw it to who?
Now, that is the first thing you've said right.
I don't even know what I'm talking about!
Don't get excited. Take it easy.
I throw the ball to first base. Whoever it is grabs the ball, so the guy runs to second. Who picks up the ball and throws it to what? What throws it to? I don't know. Throws it back to tomorrow. A triple play!
Yeah, it could be.
Oh, and another guy gets up and it's a long ball to center.
Because?
Why? I don't know, and I don't care.
Wait, what was that?
I said I don't care.
Oh, that's our shortstop.
Tonight, we bring you an evening of education and entertainment. The Ransom Center's incredible exhibition, which I hope you've all had a chance to explore, puts us in the room with the artifacts of the most enduring theatrical legacy in this country. An enduring legacy that would never have been possible without the work of the populations who were not born here, but who came here, some willingly and some without choice, and built the foundation for the entertainment industry we know and many of us love. Tonight, we will use vaudeville to explore vaudeville. We have a bill of performances using only the finest performers around, ready and willing and more than able to bring to life scripts that you can find right here in the Harry Ransom Center archives. But we make no claim to be representing vaudeville to you. We're making no claims of authenticity or historical accuracy in our performance. We are using vaudeville in order to understand vaudeville, but we are not doing vaudeville. We'll be dealing with some sensitive content here tonight, folks. They say never discuss politics or religion, and tonight we'll be talking about both at length. We'll grapple with some of our country's most toxic cultural legacies and virulent legislation and ideology. At no point in time will our performers embody any of the harmful practices or stereotypes we discuss. But if we are to dig deep into history, we cannot ignore the legacy of violence through representation. So we will rely on the archive to demonstrate that legacy. So setting aside harmful practices in order to understand how an art form works, you have to try it yourself. You don't believe me? Fine. But ask yourself, who's on stage wearing the fancy robes?
I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy, a Yankee Doodle do or die, a real-life nephew of my Uncle Sam, born on the 4th of July. I've got a Yankee Doodle sweetheart, she's my Yankee Doodle joy. Yankee Doodle into town, riding on a pony, I am a Yankee Doodle boy.
At the turn of the century, during vaudeville's early establishment, policies and politics surrounding immigration in the United States were rapidly shifting. The Second Industrial Revolution created easier and more convenient international communication and transportation. These technological advancements allowed for unprecedented economic and social connections among countries, particularly among the United States, a number of European countries, and China. In the 1880s, immigrants arrived to the United States from Europe in record numbers. In the political sphere, the value of an immigrant to the U.S. depended on preconceived, ethnically based notions of what kind of contribution they would make to the workforce. For example, Italian immigrants were considered to be better suited for jobs that required finesse, such as tailoring or millinery. Immigrants from Russia, on the other hand, were considered to be best suited for rigorous manual labor. But there were blatantly xenophobic concerns about adding foreign labor to the American workforce. According to these fears, immigrants in the workforce would degrade the integrity of American labor. Politicians and workers alike feared that certain types of labor would become stigmatized, discouraging native-born Americans from entering these fields. There was also considerable anxiety around and discrimination against immigrants from non-European countries, particularly China. In the 1880s, mob violence against Chinese Americans was rampant on the West Coast. In 1882, the Chinese Exclusion Act was signed into law, prohibiting Chinese laborers from entering the U.S. From 1902 to 1942, immigration from China to the United States was illegal. Economic concerns were at play here, but make no mistake, this legislation was strongly fueled by racist ideals about white purity. Take a look at this political cartoon drawn by Thomas Nast and published in Harper's Weekly in 1870. Here we have a structure labeled the Chinese Wall, and we're assuming you're all super smart because you're here at the Ransom Center, so you're getting it, right? You get it? Yeah. The Chinese Wall around the United States of America. On the ground in front of the wall are stereotypical representations of Chinese men. On the top of the wall is a collection of men meant to be a variety of Westerners. There is a ladder falling from the wall labeled Emigration, and the text at the bottom reads, "Throwing down the ladder by which they rose." Nast's cartoon is a commentary on ethnic relations in the U.S. during the late 19th century. The government's actions and behaviors towards immigrants from all countries stoked flames of racial tension among or within immigrant populations themselves. In an effort to stimulate assimilation, European immigrants were encouraged to distance themselves from non-white immigrants and African Americans, particularly those who had come from Ireland and Italy. This cartoon, from the 1860s, demonstrates how immigrants were pitted against one another in popular culture. The image depicts Uncle Sam being eaten by, on the left, a stereotypical Irish immigrant, and on the right, a stereotypical Chinese immigrant. By the final panel, the Chinese character has devoured both Uncle Sam and the Irish character. The message being sent to American-born citizens is that immigrants, no matter what the country of their origin, are a threat to American life. The message being sent to Irish immigrants, and by extension most other European immigrants, is to stand with Uncle Sam, not against him, because your fellow immigrants cannot be trusted, especially not those who are not white. Solidarity between and among immigrant groups was actively discouraged. All of these fears circle back to one central anxiety: the integrity of American identity. A good immigrant had not only to bring a strong, desirable work ethic to his new country, but he also needed to be able and willing to assimilate, spend his money on its goods, and to contribute to its cultural status, and to shed his previous identity for a new American one.
Hello again, everybody. Hey, how are you? Hey. Say, Bo, what do you mean running around here like that?
Like what?
Like that, with a flower in your buttonhole. Say, what's the big idea anyways?
Why, this is a national holiday, and I'm trying to celebrate, that's all.
Now, who ever heard of celebrating a national holiday with a red flower in your buttonhole? Look like you're trying to celebrate Mother's Day instead. Say, where did you ever get the idea that was the thing to wear to celebrate an American holiday? Oh, my stars and stripes forever. Where did you get such an idea?
I don't see what's wrong with my white flower. What would you have me wear?
Well, a little flag or a bit of bunting or anything of that sort that kind of indicates patriotism.
Oh, my heavens, you're old-fashioned. Do you still think a nice little flag will indicate America? Do you actually think that? Come on now. Do you really?
Well, of course I do. It's our national emblem, isn't it?
Oh, no. Don't you know any better than that?
I certainly don't.
Oh, dearie me. Where have you been since 1906?
I've been right here in America.
So blind. It's too bad.
Say, what are you talking about?
My dear friend, do you remember when we used to stroll down the road on Sunday afternoons, swishing our canes? Do you remember?
Of course I do, but what's that got to do with the symbol of America?
And nowadays, do you ever go out for a peaceful stroll on Sunday afternoons?
Say, are you crazy?
Oh, no, I am quite sane.
Then what do you mean by such a silly question? Do I go out and stroll on Sunday afternoons?
Oh, well, do you?
I should say not.
That's what I thought. And why don't you?
Why don't I stroll? Say, did you ever see the roads on Sunday?
I can't say that I have for several years. I've often looked for a road on Sunday. I always figured there was one. Under the traffic, but I never got into the matter.
Well, that's why I don't stroll on Sunday. Cars.
Exactly! Cars! And you still think a nice piece of bunting is a better decoration?
Say, what is that flower you have on there anyways?
This, my dear, is the emblem of America. It's the carnation.
It was said by American politicians that the key to progress for American society was to teach immigrants the arts and habits of civilization. If we think about what the arts of American civilization might be, vaudeville is the place to begin. Theater owners and savvy businessmen like Tony Pastor, B.F. Keith, and Edward Albee created an entire industry out of the country's turn-of-the-century economic and social climate. With a new factory-based workforce in full swing, the average working American found themselves with leisure time and money to spend. Vaudeville took entertainment of the variety show and the minstrel show and placed it all under one roof where a family could spend a pleasant day off from work together. Vaudeville ushered in a new set of standards for American theatrical experience. In B.F. Keith's theater in Boston, performers were instructed to keep their routines clean and family-friendly, else they'd be kicked off the bill. Sometimes Keith would even invite a Christian Sunday school teacher to sit in rehearsals and judge the propriety of the acts before they went live for audiences. Keith also expected a certain code of conduct from his audiences. Ushers patrolled the aisles of his theater and policed particular audience behaviors, such as smoking, stomping their feet, and talking during the show. For the contemporary audience, this just seems like basic common decency. Yeah. But at the same time, rowdy and raucous audience behavior was commonplace at the theater. The rules established for the vaudeville theater became the standard for rules to follow as an audience member at any theater. On this subject, Keith was quoted as saying, "The public needed to be educated in these matters." So here we are at Tony Pastor's 14th Street Theater in New York. We've paid for an evening. What can we expect? The typical vaudeville bill included around 10 acts and ran continuously through the day to give the appearance of a consistently thriving business. Audience members were allowed to come and go as they pleased, catching just single acts or a whole program if they wished. Performers and theater owners organized the bill based on a series of assumptions about the ebb and flow of the evening and the crowds. The first act was usually not a very good routine because the theater was really still empty. The best and most anticipated performers were given the second to last slot so that the audience would stay long enough to see them. The last act was the worst slot, casually referred to as playing to the haircuts, because audience members would begin to leave, and as a performer, you would only see the back of their heads. Sometimes theater owners would intentionally put bad performers in the last slot so the theater would clear out to make room for new paying customers. 3 key elements of vaudeville were personality, enthusiasm, and speed. Gimmicks were your insurance as a performer. You needed to have something that made you interesting, unique, and worth watching again and again. For audience members, this made vaudeville an experience of decadence. They could pay a single nickel and watch a seemingly endless array of performances of all types in one evening. It was a simple economic exchange which gave audiences the feeling of participating in a form of American abundance. Multiple acts for the price of one for you and your whole family? Vaudeville not only displayed national abundance, but also demonstrated how real upward mobility was in the USA. Many vaudeville shows were followed by amateur talent shows, and many vaudeville performers were discovered through these shows. Audiences could watch amateur performances and then return weeks later and see one of those amateur performers on the main stage bill. Evidence of that fulfilling the American dream was possible right up there on stage in front of them.
Hello, how's everybody doing tonight? Yes, doing great. I'm gonna ask a favor. Somebody please catch this. Awesome, please come up on stage. Come up, come up, come up. Hello, how are you?
Doing great. How you doing?
Awesome. Here's what you're going to do. Go ahead and reach into that bag. You're going to find a deck of cards. Would you, thank you. Thank you very much. Why don't you go ahead and take this marker? I want you to go ahead and choose any card that has tons of writing space on it and sign anything you'd like on the face of that card. You can take the deck out of the box. Yes, I'll go ahead and take that box for you. Don't worry about it. Alrighty, go ahead and choose any card it is you'd like. Doesn't matter if I see it, I will find it. Go ahead, write anything it is you'd like. Anything. Done. Alrighty. Go ahead and check this out. Make sure everything is normal inside. I'll go ahead and take that deck from you. Which one is your card? Is that it?
No, it's not.
Oh, we need to hold on to that for a moment.
Oh,
which one's yours?
I'll find it. Sorry. I apologize. Okay, I'm done.
Now, could you please show everyone else the card? Everything fine? Take your card. Go ahead and place it right here. Did everybody get a good look at that? Did Alrighty, we're going to go ahead and take that, place it right over here. Go ahead and check out, make sure that box is completely empty on the inside.
It is.
Now go ahead and do me a huge favor. Could you please get into that bag? No, don't get into it. Put your hand in there. And go ahead and find 2 strings of your liking. We're going to go ahead and place these inside of the box.
These ones.
You like those ones?
I do.
Go ahead and check those out. Make sure they're completely legit. Please go ahead and cap that. Also, please take a seat. You're giving me anxiety. Yeah, are those 2 strings fine?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. I'll take the Sharpie for you. Go ahead and hold on to this. We're going to put that in your coat pocket. Is that fine?
It is.
Go ahead and make sure those are completely taut, completely straight. They are what they are. Go ahead and take only one. Tie that around my finger. Just don't pull it. Tighter, please. Tighter. Go ahead and put another knot on there. Make sure that one doesn't come loose. All right. Please put a double knot to make sure I cannot get out of that. Just like the first one there. Tie it, pull it tight. Go ahead and take that other string, hold it out flat. Tie it exactly the same way, as tight as you can. Is that fine?
It is.
Alrighty, here's what we're going to do. Woo. Go ahead and take your dominant hand, place it on these 2 strings, tie that as tight as you can, the 2 closest to you.
These 2.
Yes. Tight, tight, tight as you can. One more knot, please. Alrighty, go ahead and take these 2 strings, if you will, closest to you.
These 2.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, sorry, wrong one. The longer ones
I got you.
that haven't been tied together. As tight as you can. He hates me.
A lot of fun.
Alrighty, go ahead and put that on there. Make sure that's completely tight. Are we fine? Now go ahead and take that card box that is inside. That came off. Go ahead and take your card box right here. Open that up. And here's what we're going to do. I'll move this out of your way. Now go ahead and open that up and try to find your card. The challenge that we pose now is that my hands are tied and you're completely free and able to use this. Don't look for it like that. That's not entertaining. Go ahead and put them face down. And go put this down right here for you. And what you're going to do is what you're going to do, you're going to try to find the card on your own. But we're going to get a little bit of help. Sir, would you go ahead and yell stop whenever you'd like? Go ahead and riffle through those. Right there, go ahead and show that card and give a wondrous round of applause for our assistants. Is that it?
No.
So you're really bad at saying stop. Can we get you, sir, to go ahead and say stop whenever you'd like? Go ahead and check out that card and make sure that it's yours. Give a wondrous round of applause. Would you go ahead and stand up for me, sir? Maybe it's because you're sitting down. I'll take this and move it out of your way as well. It appears I've been a little tied up. I was afraid something like this would happen, so this morning I went ahead and did something. Could you reach into my pockets? Yes, you will find one of two things. One is a phone. Take that out.
All right.
Put that to the side. And reach in there once more. I thought I'd mess up. I'm kind of an amateur. Go ahead. Could you please open that up? And that's my backup plan. Could you go ahead and show everybody what that card is, please? Throw it all in there. I don't care. Take that box, please. Put it in there as well. Wonderful round of applause for our audience.
Vaudeville, in many ways, perpetuated the ideal notions of the American dream, and many audience members attended the theater in order to escape the hardships of daily life. However, it's vital that we also reckon with the ways in which vaudeville perpetuated many of the toxic and dangerous ideals in American culture. Blackface minstrelsy was a foundational art form in the establishment of vaudeville. White vaudeville theater owners and performers perpetuated minstrelsy's racist tropes and traditions, both on stage and off. As we said, we will not be embodying any of these harmful performances, but to acknowledge these aspects of history, we will look at materials depicting them. On screen, you'll see images of performers and advertisements promoting minstrelsy. Take care of yourselves as you view these images. Remember, this is vaudeville theater, and you are free to check out or come and go as the show moves forward. Blackface was frequently utilized on the vaudeville stage on its own and in tandem with other ethnic stereotypes often displayed. While white vaudeville theaters typically allowed one act featuring black performers per show, routines featuring white actors in blackface had no such restrictions. To demonstrate how deeply ingrained these stereotypes were, let's look at an actual script for a routine. The script we're looking at now is called Professor Dumblehead's Classroom. This version was published in 1930 in a collection titled 10 Easy Acts for Men. This script, along with all of the others we've performed for you today, are part of the Ransom Center archives. This act depicts a classroom led by a character named Professor Dumblehead, who is described as a typical stage German. The character would most likely have been performed in the style of the German, also sometimes called Dutch acts, made famous by Weber and Fields, pictured here. The rest of the boys in the class are similarly described using stereotypes that were popular on the vaudeville stage, such as the sissy, who was a parody of feminine men. The boob, popularized, probably the most well-known, was Chico Marx, who pretended to be more ignorant than he was in order to get out of doing work. There are some ethnic descriptors here as well. Professor Dumblehead, as mentioned, is a typical stage German. Izzy Finkel is a typical stage type young Jew. Tony Baloney is a young Italian, though not described as typical of anything. Then there is Backfire Johnson. Backfire would most likely have been played by a white actor in blackface makeup. There is something similar but markedly different about Backfire's character description when compared to the other characters described by ethnicity. Take a moment to read over the list and see if you notice what that difference is. Did you notice? Both Dumblehead and Izzy are described as being typical stage versions of their ethnic identities. Backfire's character description, however, does not include the stage qualifier. While this is only one example and may not be representative of how black characters were described in all scripts, it is clear that not all ethnic stereotypes were treated equally. Some were considered to be over-the-top performances which heightened reality, and some were considered to be reality, despite being grotesque and derogatory parodies. Even performances which featured black performers but still proliferated harmful stereotypes depicting black characters as comically inept, violent, or voraciously sexual. And yes, black actors were expected to put on blackface makeup. The characters in these sketches were such grotesque parodies, so divorced from reality, actual African American people had to put on the same masks as white performers to perform them. There were certainly African American performers who blazed a trail on the vaudeville stage. Burt Williams was the most popular African American performer of the early 20th century and one of the most virtuosic performers in all of US history. Williams performed in white vaudeville theaters in blackface, as was required, but he tailored his acts to be ironic, parodying the way that white actors performed in blackface. Married couple, Leonard Harper and Ocelia Blanks, made their way in the white vaudeville circuit with a ballroom dance act. Harper went on to become a producer as well as the owner of a dance studio where black performers would teach dance routines to white performers. In 1909, S.H. Dudley established the Theater Owners Booking Agency, or TOBA, circuit of vaudeville for African American performers. But in 1920, TOBA was taken over and reorganized by Milton Starr, a white man. While TOBA provided consistent work for black performers, the wages were exceptionally poor, the travel was strenuous, and the accommodations were lacking, especially in comparison to those for white performers. Still, many of the most famous African-American performers of the 20th century got their start on the TOBA circuit, including Louis Armstrong, Josephine Baker, and Sammy Davis Jr. So typically in vaudeville, this would be intermission. You would go out and you would get food and you would come back. But here's the thing, this is a Ransom Center, so you're not allowed to bring food. For example, if you were going to vaudeville in Austin, Texas, downtown at the Paramount, wait, go back. You would have seen this. This would have been a bunch of ads that would have been lowered in front of you during intermission, because you would want to go and get tractors and stuff, I guess. I guess like in the olden days, people did that. Or you could get something to eat. Again, Ransom Center, no food. Maybe some delicious peanuts or popcorns. Popcorns? We don't plural that, do we? Ice cream, always delicious. But again, we're in the Ransom Center, so there's really no point. That's the end of intermission. Vaudeville offered immigrants the opportunity to feel like a part of American culture. Being able to buy a ticket at the start of the show made you part of one of the staples of the U.S. economy. The ability to start at the amateur circuit and find your way to the main stage created a miniature version of the American promise, which claims that anyone can start with nothing and work their way to the top. The accessibility of vaudeville as a career was one of the many things that drew immigrants to its stages. It was also a lucrative career path if you proved yourself worthy of top billing. But vaudeville wanted European immigrants as much as European immigrants might have wanted to be part of vaudeville. Routines that relied on ethnic stereotypes were immensely popular with audiences. The country's intense anxieties around immigration created an ideal atmosphere in which to offer audiences a place to come together and laugh. In these sketches, like you saw with Professor Dumblehead, character descriptions often only included a character's ethnicity, meaning that performers could draw on a stereotype to quickly get into character. This also benefited the fast pace of vaudeville routines. You don't need to waste time on exposition if the audience immediately knows what to expect from your characters. But ethnic caricatures also allowed for vaudeville audiences and performers to see themselves reflected on the stage in a way that could reaffirm their identity as Americans. For example, if an Italian-American audience member sees a caricature of an Italian immigrant on stage, she can laugh because she recognizes and distances herself from it. She knows that the stereotype exists, so she is in the know. She might even know some people who fulfill the stereotype, but she can relax and have a laugh because she is not like the character on stage. How could she be? She is a paying customer at this fine theatrical establishment. These routines also offered a sense of solidarity. As the Ransom Center exhibition notes, being represented on the vaudeville stage was an indicator of belonging. While the stereotype may have been over the top, being in on the joke about your own ethnicity meant that you were part of American culture. Particular ethnicities waxed and waned in popularity among audiences as immigration surged and the populations of American cities changed. As a result, certain performers adopted stage names that suggested ethnicities that were not their own, but were playing well to audiences at the time. Walter Van Brunt, pictured here, was an American vaudeville singer who performed in the style of an Irish tenor. Van Brunt eventually changed his name to Walter Scanlon to suggest a true Irish heritage, which increased his popularity. Not all routines about ethnicity were parody. You can see in the exhibition the lyrics to a song called No Irish Need Apply, which was often performed by the father of vaudeville himself, Tony Pastor. The lyrics openly discuss the discrimination that Irish immigrants faced during the early 20th century. As we said at the beginning of tonight's performance, we are using vaudeville in order to understand vaudeville. So let's take a close look at one of the acts you might have seen if you'd attended a performance during vaudeville's golden years. Now, the actual title of this act includes a slur against Italian-American immigrants during the time, so we're going to rename it Donovan and Gavani. In this act, an Irish-American named Donovan and an Italian-American named Gavani meet each other when Donovan dumps his water basin out of his window and onto Gavani's head. The scene turns into a verbal and physical slapstick routine where the men argue with one another about whether or not they are truly Americans, all the while Gavani tries to sell Donovan a banana. It's actually very funny. We should acknowledge, however, that most of the act's humor lies in the characters of these two men. Their dialogue, as you'll see, is written phonetically to give the actor an exaggerated accent. But there's so many layers to the comedy and the social commentary in this scene. In order to see that, can we have our two actors back on stage? Take your phone. Thank you, both. We won't be asking these lovely gentlemen to perform the stereotyped characters, but it helps to hear the dialogue read out loud since these lines were written to be spoken and not read. Aaron and Miles, could you read the section of the script and perform the meaning behind the dialogue, but please don't use the accents as written? Great, thank you so much. Okay. And then, lovely audience, you will see up on the screen photos of the script, which is available here for research at the Ransom Center Archives, so feel free to follow along with our actors. Okay, let's jump in.
Okay. Want to buy the banana? 2 for a $5.
Ooh, do you mind that for ignorance? Asking me to buy a banana. Say, Spaghetti, if I had 5 cents, I wouldn't be here talking to you.
No. Who would you be talking to?
I'd be down to the Dutchman, talking to him and losing me thirst.
Buy the banana. He much a good for the thirst. And he know I make it a headache in the head.
Go on with ya. I don't want any banana.
Your son, he want a banana?
I have no son.
Well, if you had a son, would he want a the banana? Yes?
Say, Dago, are you trying to kid me?
Me no got to the kid. I got to the banana. That's all.
Ha, 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 ha. Be sorry, you're all right. He ought to be an Irishman.
Me no want to be an Irishman. Me no like it an Irishman. Irishman always a policeman.
Well, by snakes, I'm no policeman. An Irishman, all right.
How long have you been in this country?
5 years this coming, Thursday a week.
5 a year?
Sure, and didn't you hear me say it?
5 a year in this country and no a policeman?
Yes, Spaghetti.
Then you no Irishman.
See here, you garlic grabber. I'll have you to understand that every bit of me is an Irish. And if you dare to say as it ain't, I'll knock your block off.
Me no want to lose a block. Me keep it the block. Please keep it the knock.
You better back off. The trouble with you foreigners is that you come over to this country and try to run us Americans.
You Americano.
Sure I am.
You been here a 5 a year, and you Americano?
And what if I have been here 5 years?
You know Americano. You know I'm born in this country. You born in Ireland, yes?
Well, and Ireland is in this country, ain't it? Sure, it's only a suburb of New York. Look at Milwaukee. Ain't that the suburb of Germany? Go on with ya. Don't talk to me about geographics.
You hear about Cristo Colombo? He very great Americano. He discovered this country.
And do you call him a great man just because he discovered this country?
Sure. Cristo Colombo, a great man.
Ah, go on. How could he help discover America? America was here waiting to be discovered, wasn't it?
Maybe yes. I think she was.
Sure it was. Anybody could have discovered it. By Nelly, I could have discovered it myself. Columbus wasn't so darn smart.
Thank you both so much. All right, let's look at the, okay, thank you. This is my, yeah, you go. Let's dig into the layers of humors in this scene. Vaudeville was known for its fast-paced, quick-witted dialogue. Donovan and Gavani indulge in a few moments of clever wordplay here. There's a lot of play with the word kid, where Donovan asks if Gavani is kidding him, and Gavani responds he doesn't have a kid, meaning a child. It's a similar humor to what we heard in the Abbott Costello famous Who's on First earlier, a misunderstanding between two people around the different meanings of words in the English language. Later in the scene, when Donovan threatens to knock Gavani's block off, Gavani understands the intention behind the threat, but takes the language seriously, pleading with Donovan to keep the knock so Gavani can keep his block. As an Italian immigrant, Gavani's first language was probably not English. His response to the common English idiom allows for audience members who are familiar with it to laugh at his literal interpretation and feel like they're in on the joke. There are a few references to recognizable ethnic stereotypes. For example, Donovan refers to Gavani as spaghetti, referencing not only the stereotypical food associated with Italians, but also the common association of Italians with food. We saw this earlier in the cast list for Professor Dumblehead, whose Italian character was named Tony Baloney. When Gavani asked Donovan what he'd be doing if he had a nickel, Donovan says he'd be losing his thirst, implying he'd be off drinking. The stereotype of the alcoholic Irishman is one we might recognize. In fact, we have an entire holiday that in some fashion celebrates this stereotype. The drunken Irishman stereotype begins in about the mid-19th century. An influx of Catholic Irish immigrants into urban centers like Boston sent Americans with anti-immigrant sentiments into a frenzy, and many joined the Protestants in the temperance movement. Together, they formed the lazy, short-tempered, drunken Irishmen as propaganda, merging their two ideologies to strengthen their movements. Gavani also expresses a distaste for Irishmen because he assumes they're all policemen. This was a stereotype rooted in fact. Irish immigrants were often recruited for civil service jobs because they were one of the few groups of immigrants whose native language was also English. In major cities like Boston, Chicago, New York, this also meant being recruited to the police force. This is an example based on stereotype based not where the character comes from, but how they are in America. Gavani flips things on its head when he accuses Donovan of not being a true Irishman because he isn't a police officer. Donovan's Irish identity is erased because he does not fulfill a stereotype that about his people that is only true in an American context. Near the end of the excerpt, Gavani brings up Christopher Columbus as an example of a great American. If we had read the script for Professor Dumblehead, you would have seen our pal Tony Baloney bring up Columbus as well. Christopher Columbus was, for many Italian-American immigrants, an icon both of Italian and American pride. Many Italians felt that because Columbus had discovered America, Italian Americans should take credit for the country's foundation. In areas of dense Italian-American communities, particularly in the Northeast, October 8th, often called Columbus Day, is still a huge celebration. The act also makes explicit reference to the tensions around immigration that we discussed earlier, and that were, no doubt, on the minds of the people in the audience. Donovan makes a joke about Ireland being a suburb of New York and Milwaukee being a suburb of Germany, and this, of course, is a reference to mass influx of immigrants from these countries to particular areas of the United States. Donovan also makes an offhand remark about Gavani being a typical foreigner who come over to this country and try to run us Americans. Here we see traces of that political cartoon we looked at earlier, the pitting of immigrant groups against one another to encourage assimilation. Donovan identifies as an American and Gavoni as a foreigner, but the way the script is written, with characters speaking in exaggerating accents and fulfilling immigrant stereotypes, this makes it a moment of comic irony. Audience members would be laughing at the actor's delivery and comic timing, but also at the idea that Donovan was a true American, a laughter that could only come from someone who felt they were, in fact, in some way beyond that themselves. Many who enter a theater go in hoping to get away from it all, to spend a moment or two away from the trials and tribulations of everyday life. But performance is never separate from the world in which it's made. Vaudeville audiences may have wanted to have a laugh and be entertained, but they were also learning something integral about themselves, about their country, and about the world. Vaudeville has been described as a lively corpse, an art form that supposedly died in the 1940s, but has a legacy that continues to the present day. It says so much about American society that the most American form of entertainment, the genre upon which our culture's concept of show business was founded, was propelled by commentaries on social and political issues still relevant nearly a century later. But while those in power, from tyrannical theater owners like Keith or Pastor to ruthless congressmen, sought to Americanize those they encountered, vaudeville and American culture was and is made only stronger by the presence of diverse groups from varying backgrounds. Vaudeville is the quintessential American form of entertainment because it is the quintessential American immigrant form of entertainment.
Doc, this is great and all. Like, you're doing a great job. Love it. It's really good. But gotta wrap it up a little bit.
But
We're almost at time. We got our really exciting second to last act. So we gotta wrap it up. Huh? Great. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here tonight. Your second to last act, Emily McIntyre and Stacey Agnew.
Can we give another round of applause for Emily McIntyre? How about for Charlotte Canning? Sorry, usually I'm not a name dropper. Took a pleasure
trip. I took my mother-in-law to the airport. Chickens. You guys like chickens? Chicken jokes? Chicken. What do you call chicken that wakes you up every morning?
What?
Alarm clock. Chicken, he goes to the library, chicken, he brings in, and he goes to the library and says, look. Librarian gives the chicken a couple books, he goes away 2 hours later, chicken comes back, and he gives the book back, he says, book. Librarian takes the 3 books, chicken, he leaves, and he comes back an hour later, and librarian's thinking, there's no way this chicken is able to read all these books so quickly, and he comes back and he says, book. He gives the chicken 4 books, and so he's like, I gotta follow the chicken, find out where the chicken's going, and so the chicken, he follows him down to the river, to the pond, and there's a frog there, and the chicken, he hands him the books, and the frog says, read it. Last one for tonight, folks. So the chicken and the egg in the bed, and chicken sitting back. Chicken is smoking a cigarette. He looks really good, really happy about himself. And the egg, egg's not too happy. Egg turns over to the side and says, "Well, I guess that answers that question."